You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week, back from the road. Wait, were you back last week?
Late Thursday.
Oh, okay. Back on the podcast is Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use, even a simple thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter and make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine, so you can get a notification when we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how was your time on the road?
It was good, very productive. Obviously, good to be back. Grateful to Andy and to Ben for filling in. I just want to say, great guys, extremely talented, love having a beer with them, all that. But they're also very agreeable with you two. I did notice that in listening to this. You kind of, I think I might change the tone a little bit. Jumping back into the fray here.
We bully them aggressively, like before we start recording.
Well done.
So there's a lot of fear behind that. But
I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to those episodes, but I definitely interjected where I was like, nope, see, this is the point where Jeff would come in and say the exact opposite.
I did notice that. I did listen, did appreciate the reference to the Jeff facts.
Oh, yeah.
Or as
Jeff
I call
facts.
them, facts.
Yeah.
So,
Just
good stuff.
As I call it, the truth. Anna, how are you doing this week?
good.
Very good, very good.
Good to have you back, Jeff.
Let's get ready to battle the truth.
The truth.
Also, kind of like a money pro wrestling name. All right, well, before we get started, we have a word from our new sponsor, Adobe. Hi, I'm David Manti, and I want you to join me and John Burdett from Adobe to discuss practical tips, how to transform your digital sales and self-service. John, one thing that we're going to be talking about is how you can create these sales Ironmen, augmented salespeople. Is this just a cheap ploy to tie in a Marvel tie, or is this a real thing that people could use?
This is a real thing. This is automating your sales and service so that your salespeople can go out and sell even more, with automation having their back and not competition for them. It's allowing them to do more with the less that they always have in terms of time and effort and energy.
Very good. Plus, then they can go home and tell their kids that they're an Iron Man.
That they're Iron Man.
Excellent. Well, very much looking forward to it. Make sure to register at the link below and join myself and John Burdett for practical tips, how to transform your digital sales and self-service. We'll see you there. And we're back. And before we jump into that first story, just know that changing customer expectations and increasing cost and competitive pressures are forcing industrial manufacturers to rethink how they engage with buyers to grow revenue, improve profitability, and gain operational efficiencies. John Burdett from Adobe and I recently sat down to talk about what industrial manufacturers should consider with their commerce initiatives and how they should tie into their digital customer experience. Click the link in the live chat to watch it now. It'll also be in the description. It is a good discussion, and we hope you get a chance to check it out. Also, thank you to everyone that joined us live for our hose discussion this week. That one was a banger. All right, our first story this week. Developer proposes $5 billion man-made moon in Dubai. Well, if you'd like to visit the moon, instead of a rocket ship high in the air, you might only need a ticket to Dubai. Canadian entrepreneur Michael Henderson wants to build a 900-foot replica of the moon on top of a 10-story building in Dubai. Project Moon is funded by Moon World Resorts Incorporated. Henderson is the co-founder, and he is excited about the project, specifically the brand recognition. Henderson says, "We have the biggest brand in the world. 8 billion people know our brand, and we haven't even started yet." Because he's talking about He's talking about the moon. You guys get it? He's talking about the moon. The moon is the brand. He's going to launch another project called Earth. The scope of the project includes a destination resort inside the moon, a 4,000-room hotel, an arena capable of hosting 10,000 people, most likely for a UFC event, and a lunar colony where guests could see what it's like to walk on the moon. Anna, I bet you're just chomping at the bit to walk on the moon and visit this moon overseas.
I'm already exhausted just like thinking about this project. I don't know. The line about 8 million people already know our brand. As if this company has like sole rights to the moon's likeness and just...
Did they buy likeness rights? And come on, when I read that line, it made me think like, okay, there have to be some. How many people don't know about the moon?
Well, true. And like, to be honest, do you think that the moon has, like the real moon has a lawyer and trademark rights? Probably not. So you could probably the moon TM it
that's right.
right away.
I mean, I bet there are just batches of lawyers on this already.
To me, the fact that people are trying to spin this project as science and progress when it's little more than like a really overtly expensive tourist attraction seems like a little bit of a reach to me. Mm-hmm. Of more importance, I think, are maybe the barriers here. I think the most obvious one is the cost. A $5 billion fake the moon in a time period where the future of fossil fuels is in doubt and the UAE's GDP is heavily dependent on selling oil. Mm-hmm. That might be a factor. I don't know.
I mean, I think there's still a little bit of a runway there in terms of the sick wealth.
I mean, maybe, but they already, the article pointed to some major projects that had been scrapped during an economic downturn that was pretty recent, like only a decade ago. Secondly, I think, with interest rates being high, the economy looking a little bit murky, that pushing past all that is, one thing. But also, is it at all practical? I don't know. I mean, like they talked about a similar project being scrapped in England because of light pollution and the pushback that they got from people who were living and working in the area. Fair enough, because this thing is supposed to glow all night.
Yeah, but in different shades to match the moon's current cycle. You can't get
mad at the moon.
Yeah, so sometimes it'll be darker because it'll just be the little thumbnail.
I'm not mad at Real the Moon. I have no beefs with Real the Moon. I think that if I lived next door to Fake the Moon TM, I don't think I would appreciate...
That's not their brand.
The 24 Fake the Moon TM.
Fake the Moon is not their brand.
Yeah.
I don't think I would appreciate the glowing. I also think that from a practical standpoint, like they're talking about putting a casino in there. Gambling in this country is not even legal. I think you're kind of left with not a lot unless people are really into this idea of a lunar colony. But have they have they workshopped that at all? Like, are people saying like, I would love to go to the moon, but I'm not going to be able to afford that. So something that is like an approximate version of the moon, some sort of a colony that I can walk through. Do people want to do that?
I have a mild interest, and I think that a lot of people would too.
Yeah,
I think so.
But there's all kinds of like simulated stuff out there, museums and things like that. Like, I don't know.
That we've been to.
Yeah,
like,
but you're not in a fake moon.
You're gonna fly to Dubai to walk through a fake moon.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
There are a lot of people who will. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many Star Wars conventions there are
in a
given calendar year? I mean, this is a fascination for a lot of people.
Well,
but to that point, they just killed that $2,500 a night Star Wars hotel in Disney. So
after like 3 years,
maybe there's a limit.
There might be a limit. That's all I'm saying. And it seems like maybe a challenging build, just based on the moon-like shape of the fake moon TM. And so it seems like this project could be, maybe subject to some bloat along the way. So $5 billion, maybe at the bottom. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like I'm not that excited about it. It just doesn't seem like maybe it's that necessary,
I just see myself, if you come out with Fake the Moon TM, like a channel on YouTube, that is just a rabbit hole I could dive well into. There was faking the moon landing, there was the flat earth, now the moon is fake. I am in.
Yeah.
Completely. Jeff, so the attraction of essentially putting Epcot on top of a giant building in Dubai, again, I see it as a potential tourist destination, but Anna has some really good points about a potential economic downturn really impacting big, large-scale projects like this.
Well, it has happened in the past, 100%. During late 2000s, there was definitely a lot of unfinished projects in Dubai. A lot of those have come back because there has been a recovery. And while I'm not an expert on the economy of the UAE, it seems to be doing well. Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, they're building more stuff. There is a lot of traffic. There's a ton of international traffic that goes through Dubai, either for tourist reasons or growing financial markets, all of those things. So as far as all of that goes, I think if a developer wants to build something, I'm all for it being more of an innovative, creative design than more square, tall buildings. The other thing, and I'll preface this by saying I have no delusions of this essentially being a $5 billion yurt, okay? But the reality is spherical buildings are, from an energy perspective, actually more efficient because of the way the air flows, the air circulates more effectively than with having a square cornered traditional structure.
Yeah.
Okay. So in that way, there are potential energy savings from this type of architecture. Again, I get it. They're building a resort. That's not what they're focused on here.
Yeah.
But it also, this type of design potentially can provide more space with less land mass. That's another advantage to this type of architecture. Now, I'm not saying that's the goal here, okay? I get that. But when we talk about the thing that leads to the thing, we can perfect these types of structures at this scale, then maybe we can be smarter when it comes to, I mean, we're running out of dirt, right? We hear that all the time. Real estate prices are through the roof. If we can find more efficient ways of constructing homes and dwellings and other buildings, that's something I think that we could potentially benefit from in this type of situation.
So wait, I have a question though. How is it a smaller footprint? I don't understand that.
Because you get more square footage because of the space. You're not building square corners on everything. It's more open space. So you have more room to build in.
But isn't it like
It's
spreading
expanding but it's
spreading out over more land area?
No, it's taking up the same amount of land area, but you have more internal space
More
because
usable
of the shape.
space.
More usable space because you don't have corners.
Yeah. It's like one of the big benefits of using additive manufacturing to create like homes and new structures is how you can change the space that is traditional in like stick buildings.
So more usable, non-legal casino space.
Potentially,
But
fewer building materials, okay, for the same type of structure and same type of space. Again, not saying that's their goal. I'm saying if we can learn from these types of innovative projects, there is something down the line we can take away from it potentially. And that would be the takeaway here.
Don't you think the original moon should get to be the thing that leads to the thing, though? I mean,
you're all against interstellar travel.
Tens of thousands of years, and it has done nothing with its potential.
Time to step
Just
Give
aside,
this
real
guy
moon.
a break
Sitting
and let
there,
him take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, that's true. It's a little bit condescending, to be honest with you. The moon. I mean, let's
Plus,
be
do
honest.
you just throw TM on the back of everything now and like it's yours?
Yeah.
Do you have to worry about this?
I don't know if I say it enough times that I automatically get the trademark.
Yeah, no, I think that we timestamp it, resubmit it, and then it's yours.
It's like squatters' rights. You just after a while.
Plus, are you saying you would not go to a concert at this new place in Vegas that has this same type of deal?
No, I would, but
that MSG Sphere?
But like I'm not gonna specifically choose a location to only attend an event at the moon. You know what I mean? Like I think I would. That's not gonna like put me over the edge and be like, I need to buy a plane ticket here to go. I mean, so maybe if it's there, I would see it, but I don't know. It's not like I'm not like.
If it was called something other than the moon, would you feel differently?
What else would it be called?
The one in Vegas is called the MSG Sphere, and it's the same type of construction.
Okay.
Is that better?
I don't know. I would have to think about that. Can I trademark it?
It's already been trademarked.
The Sphere,
but
the Sphere TM.
yeah, if you can, I'm sure there's some legal wrangling you can figure out there.
Well,
Just throw a TM on it. That seems to be
Just throw
working so
TM
far.
on it. Yeah.
I do like
Put
to
a rooster
see.
on it.
A rooster.
I like to see all the innovative structures that are coming out. I like it when people take chances and we see how there could be new uses of materials in livable spaces. It makes me think of all the kind of crazy things that you can find on Airbnb. How you can in Utah, you can live inside a giant potato. You know, there's an actual shoe. And I mean, this is something that if it was a low cost yurt, hipsters would be clamoring for, and it would be booked out for 3 years. I think that because it's also a $5 billion project on top of a superstructure in a land known for sick oil wealth, maybe that's why, there's a little bit more blowback. But I think that if this was just kind of a cool project sitting on a regular piece of land that you could get for a few nights at a reasonable rate, I mean, it wouldn't be
reasonable, right?
Well, I don't know. I guess I have no idea. And I mean, Jeff, to your point, in the event that my kid, when my kids are grown and disposable income re-enters my life, I could definitely see going to a special event that was held at a lunar colony on top of a building. But I mean, until then, I'm going to have to settle for the rural Wisconsin yurt on a creek. What amenities does it have? It comes with a canoe leaned up against the back. Mm-hmm. That's it.
What a waste of your moon awareness.
All right. Well, our next hot button story of this week is world's largest airplane successfully releases hypersonic test vehicle. Stratolaunch wants to advance high-speed technology through innovative design, innovative manufacturing, and innovative operation of world-class aerospace vehicles. The whole idea is to launch payloads from the sky rather than the ground. Well, this week, the company announced that it successfully completed a test of the Talon A separation test vehicle, the TA-0, if you will, on May 13th. The flight was the 11th for the company's rock launch platform, which is called the world's largest airplane. The flight lasted 4 hours and 8 minutes, during which the team performed risk reduction by demonstrating the Talon A launch system can cleanly and safely separate hypersonic vehicles from the rock's center wing pylon. With this landmark test complete, the team will progress toward its first hypersonic flight of the TA-1 expendable testbed in late summer of 2023. Jeff, I was surprised that this story reached the top 5, and it comes just a few weeks after we saw the epic failure of Virgin Orbit just go under. And, this company also has flirted with being insolvent as well in the past. So I think this is kind of a very motivational. It's an interesting success story so far.
Yeah, and I think Anna's going to get into more of the history of the company. It's intriguing going all the way back to Paul Allen, who was involved in the founding and stuff. What interests me here is the application. Because unless I've missed something, I don't think Stratosphere has really come out and said, this is what we're going to use this for. Correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that these stories get so much attention is because of the hypersonic dynamic, because we hear so much about it from a weaponization perspective. Here, I think the initial perspective was using it for space launching, right? It's going to be more cost effective to basically get an airplane up and going and then launch vehicles from there.
Yeah, or satellites.
Yeah, potentially. And I mean, the Stratolaunch at one point was working with SpaceX. So, I mean, there is that potential. I still think about how intriguing this could be for solving a lot of supply chain issues in terms of the hypersonic delivery of supplies, either for military applications or for human, aid, basically, in times of disaster or famine or whatever. So the technology has a lot of different applications. You just wonder where it's going to end up going. They're already working with Space Force here. You can see they had a big relationship. I think it was Brandenburg, their base there, with a lot of these test flights and things like that. Is it going to go a military route? Because that seems to be where a lot of the pressure is, especially right now.
And the money.
Russia has reportedly been using hypersonic missiles over against Ukraine with limited success. China is potentially really leading the way in terms of hypersonic missile development. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, and really the history of this technology. It's been around for a long time. Really, the first hypersonic missile, I was doing a little bit of research, it was kind of interesting, was actually based off of V2 rocket technology, which goes back to World War II.
Wow.
So that's where the origins are. Again, it'll be interesting to see where we take this and where we allow it to go. Yeah. Like you said, a lot of money in military R&D right now, especially with this type of system. And this technology is so hot and under so much scrutiny right now from a national defense perspective.
And it's Vandenberg Air Force Base.
My bad.
It was close. Anna, what an interesting development just happened today, I believe, where Stratolaunch just acquired some of the assets of Virgin Orbit. How do you think, why did Virgin Orbit fail and Stratolaunch continues on?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think there's just a lot of luck also. Honestly, I mean,
Timing.
Timing. Obviously, as you mentioned, like this was a company that almost didn't make it. I think that makes it an interesting story. And I do want to talk about that. Before we do, I think it's important to also get back to this issue with Virgin Orbit. So, yeah, Launch, it's been confirmed, has bought Virgin Orbit's aircraft assets at auction. According to a few reports, they bought the Virgin's Cosmic Girl aircraft and related assets for $17 million. The craft is a modified Boeing 747, which was reportedly selected due to its carrying capacity. That was custom built for Virgin Orbit. The idea here is that Stratolaunch would use this as a space launch platform, though Virgin Orbit was unable to do so successfully, though I believe that had more to do with their rockets than the plane.
Yeah. Because isn't Stratolaunch talking about putting their rock launch platform onto Cosmic Girl?
Yes, exactly. So hopefully they have more success with that. It seems likely, I think, based on the company's several successful tests that they already have under their belt. They have some sophisticated partnerships on hypersonics that, they have that contract with the U.S. Air Force Test Lab, as you alluded to. And they recovered from the death of Paul Allen, which almost sunk that company. He was like their chief investor. He died in 2018. They almost went under in 2019. And then Cerberus Capital Management, who specializes in distressed companies, kind of swooped in, and then they hit the ground running again, like pretty hard, which is pretty remarkable when you consider that Stratolaunch had effectively ceased operations, laid everybody off, and it was like a hot second where it did not look good. Interestingly enough, Cerberus considered taking Virgin Orbit private when that company was struggling, but it looks like they decided not to ultimately and put all their eggs in the Stratolaunch basket. And I think waiting out actually paid off for them because they were able to obtain these assets for a pretty good price that was reportedly gained through, quote, hard-fought negotiations. So worked out well for Stratolaunch. I think this will be a nice asset for them to have. And then not to mention just having another competitor out of the way. It's pretty important. So,
I mean, hard-fought negotiations. First of all, I think it would be a very, very fun to be at the table for the Virgin Orbit bankruptcy auction. But I mean, like, what's the argument from people trying to get a higher price? Like, hey, if you don't pay more, we sell it for scrap. Like, I mean, Stratolaunch is, basically, hey, it's us or nobody else, I'm assuming.
I guess, but to be honest, like they announced this auction just a couple weeks ago, and they sold all their stuff like right away.
Yeah.
To people like, right down the road, like Rocket Lab had bought their facility. They're like a mile away. Yeah. And there's so many people in that space that could use that stuff. And I think they're thinking, well, I might as well get it at a bargain bin rate.
Yeah.
So people were jumping on that stuff. I don't know if there would be another person or a company lined up to buy that massive plane for that amount of money.
Yeah.
But fair point, they definitely have more leverage, I think, in that scenario than Virgin Orbit.
Well, it's so possible that, what was the story we did? Was it Elvis's plane that just kind of sat there for 40 years and they finally sold?
Right.
Like, there was a good chance that Cosmic Girl just kind of hung out in a hangar until someone found it again, and they're like, oh, maybe we could turn it into an RV?
Yeah.
A really interesting part of that Cerberus story is that you're right. Everybody was laid off. And in late 2019, they reacquired staff. That's crazy to me.
So crazy,
Just like, imagine being laid off because your company goes under. And there are so many times that people are looking for a lifeline and it just never comes through. And in this one very interesting example, it does. I really encourage people to look at the photos of this payload taking off from the aircraft as well, because it just gives you a better sense of the scale. And sometimes you can see the photos with people standing by it, and it's incredible. It's like the wingspan is wider than a football field. Yeah. But to see these hypersonic payloads basically looking like, a little pebble falling from a craft, you're just like, no, that's a pretty sophisticated hypersonic aircraft. Dr. Zachary Creever, who is the CEO and president for Stratolaunch, said, "We now stand at the precipice of achieving hypersonic flight." I'm like, I mean, you're at the precipice, but you achieved it. You did it. You did it. Let's see where it goes from there.
Well, there was just a detachment.
Yeah.
The actual hypersonic flight
true.
comes here at the end of the summer.
So it is. I guess it is. Yes, you're right. It's exactly the precipice. You're on Zach's side now, huh? Jeff and Dr. Zach, the truth.
I'm just here to help, David.
Thank you for helping, Jeff. All right. Our next most popular story. 100-year-old Lingotto factory inspires latest Fiat design. On May 23rd, 1923, the Lingotto production facility in Turin opened its doors. When it opened, it was the largest auto production plant in the world, and its unique shape featured 5 floors surrounded by windows. Each floor was used for a different segment of the production process: raw materials at the bottom and a finished product at the top. The Lingotto also featured a 1.5-kilometer test track and a flat rooftop that was featured in the 1969 version of the movie The Italian Job. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. Well, Fiat is marking the 100th anniversary of the building by using it as a design marker for future vehicles. According to Olivier Francois, Fiat CEO, the Lingotto, which still serves as Fiat's headquarters, will inspire new design elements on 2024 model year Fiats. For example, the former test track, now used as a rooftop garden, will inspire interior shapes. So, Anna, more ovals.
Lots of ovals.
Lots of ovals.
Yep, lots of windows, they also said, which is, okay, it's a car.
Yeah, it's inspired by our building that's unique because of windows and ovals. So, it's going to have windows and ovals.
Yeah.
She's still mad at the moon.
Yeah. Jeff Facts, TM. Yeah, I know, I am. I really enjoyed this story because it was one of those where when I was writing it, I knew that no one was going to view it. But I was wrong. People did view it, so that was exciting. And I knew absolutely nothing about this factory, which is has such a rich history and is very interesting, not just for Fiat, but also the history for automotive in general. So, I think it's not exactly unusual for a company to try to make a big splash about a new design marker or a theme, right, for how they will apply a new look and feel to their vehicles. It's just like an easy fluff piece for the PR department. I don't know that the public at large is like, whoa, it's very like design oriented. And,
yeah.
But this facility was so cutting edge for its time that you can see why the Fiat designers would actually be inspired by it. I don't think they're trying to shoehorn this necessarily. I think it actually makes sense because it's a cool building. As you mentioned, it had 5 floors. The production process basically started on the ground floor and worked upward, which is something you do not see at all today. Mm-hmm. Lingotto had like an access ramp inside, so it was like a helix design, so the vehicles would actually move upwards. Like, that is cool.
That is very cool, yeah.
So 80 different models of car were produced there in its lifetime. The factory operated for almost 60 years before it was determined to be obsolete. But instead of being left to dereliction, Lingotto was restored into a modern complex. This kind of started in the 1980s. As you mentioned, Fiat's headquarters are there, but it also features a multi-purpose complex with hotels, retail. There's a conference center there, Europe's largest hanging garden off of the roof, which is so cool. Mm-hmm. For me, like, what is the most striking about visiting Europe is just how many old, beautiful buildings there are still around being maintained, restored, repurposed, or whatever. You can see that history on display there. Mm-hmm. In America, we do a lot of tearing down and starting over.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not as old as Europe, so I get that. Like, those cities are very old. But I know it makes financial sense a lot of the time to just tear it down and start over. But I think it certainly leaves something lacking in aesthetics. So I really enjoyed seeing this, how it's being put to use today, how it operated then, and the design stuff, yeah.
The design stuff is very cool. I sometimes question, because we see automakers do this a lot. They try and pinpoint a particular part or artifact from their history and then use that in a splashy new launch. We saw that with the Pony concept. And I don't think this one is just going for nostalgia and trying to rope people in that way. I don't know. I think that I like it when a company embraces its rich legacy, kind of brings it to the foreground again in design. And you're right, it does juxtaposed to how we do it in America, where if we don't tear it down to rebuild on top of it, we let it just crumble to the ground. I mean, Jeff, we look at, there are entire sections of Detroit that are just not even livable anymore because it's like that time is past.
No, the first thing I did think of in looking at this story was the Detroit Packard plant that we've covered and how that it was so massive and just left to, now they're just basically they have to tear it down. It's become just a blight on the city, and there's a lot of environmental issues and everything there. So definite contrast there. Now, I think the design elements are actually a little bit more than just marketing lingo. I'm going to kind of circle back to that. I think there is a real prominent connection that they're going to be able to make with some new products that they're rolling out here. Fiat, to me, is a really interesting company because it's somebody here in the U.S. we don't really pay attention to. I mean, sales here in the U.S. are in the thousands lately over the last 6 or 7 years. And this is after a period where they were actually doing okay. When you looked at the early 2010s, Fiat did have decent sales numbers here in the U.S. Minimal compared to their global sales, but still they had a bit of a presence. But when you look at how things have changed from people looking at fuel-efficient cars to SUVs and trucks, Fiat just did not have a place in that market. Now, they're still number one in Italy. They're number one, oddly enough, in Brazil. Okay, number one vehicle in both of those places and dominant. They are the vehicle. So it's interesting. So there's obviously a lot of positive takeaways there. Stellantis, when they bought Fiat or when that was brought into the fold with Fiat, that's when everything in the U.S. started kind of going downhill. But last fall, they said they're going to be releasing the 500e in 2024 to the North American market. Now, when you look at an electric vehicle and all the things there where it's seen as a little bit more of a, I guess you could say just more of a practical mode of transportation. Yeah. That's where this could really come into play. And when they start incorporating some of these design elements with the circular sort of approach and a more smoother interior design, I could see that being a real marketing hook for an electric vehicle. When you look at an interior that is more high tech, more user-focused, more sleek designs, we're talking about getting rid of a lot of the traditional lines that you see inside of an interior on a traditional vehicle with the vents and with the controls and all that, more flat screens and things like that. And if you look at aerial views of that facility and all the windows, you could definitely tell a great marketing story there in talking about the tradition of Fiat, who, again, the American auto buyer knows so little about and is not paid attention to. But if you've got a car with a proven track record that can be reliable, and that there were some reliability issues in the past, but then tie all this together, I think it could be a really cool story. So I think this is a little bit more than just marketing speak. I think this actually does have a legit design engineering element that they're going to bring to this new 500e next year.
I think it all depends on the price point, because Fiat did sort of have a moment in the sun in the US. And I don't know, do you think it was entirely tied to the Italian Job reboot? Like, the Italian Job reboot came out, everyone wanted a Fiat, and then, they were out there for a little bit and then kind of just went away. Like, I know that we flirted with it for a minute. It was, it's one of those cars that carriers always wanted, but when we looked at it, when you compare it to every other automobile, it's not cost competitive at all. Like, you're buying it because you want the Fiat, and that just wasn't enough to put us over.
Well, a lot of that is because has resulted of fewer sales. So it becomes more expensive to maintain, buy, source, all of that kind of stuff. So if that infrastructure comes back under the Stellantis umbrella and they really push it, a lot of those price point issues will come down, because in those other markets, one of the key selling points is price. Yeah, it's a less expensive option.
When they're selling this, do they need to keep the test track and the Lingotto production facility? Does that need to be at the foreground of the story? Just because when you look at some of the interior design elements of this car, you could also think that it was strongly inspired by like gel caps. To me, when I was just looking at some of the footage, I'm like, that kind of all looks like medicine. So I don't know. I get it how all the sharp edges are rounding right now, but I think that maybe it benefits them by keeping the story along. Sometimes a story helps sell a car.
Oh, of course it does.
Again, reiterating that it's a great example of the public and company embracing and preserving and then growing its legacy. And they're not all the Detroit Packard plants in the U.S. One place that I've always wanted to go to was the Ford. It's the Ford Paquette Avenue plant in Detroit. It's the birthplace of the Model T, and it's now used to celebrate Detroit's automotive heritage and spirit of innovation. They have a bunch of legacy equipment there. Kids can get in different versions of models, and adults can get in different versions of Model Ts. And So there are some examples of it in the U.S. working. Unfortunately, I think when you think of a manufacturing legacy in the U.S. and old buildings, you think of, the places that you broke into as an adolescent.
Right, yeah.
All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, Tesla bot can walk, navigate, and pick up items. Tesla recently unveiled new footage of the company's humanoid Tesla bots, and it just went so much better than the reveal at Tesla's AI Day in September last year. Also known as Optimus, these robot prototypes put on quite a show. For example, 3 of the humanoids were shown walking forward without stumbling, which is a vast improvement from the bumbling, stumbling bots from last year. Optimus is also learning to navigate and memorize its surroundings with software developed for Tesla's autopilot systems. Tesla's R&D department is also working on making the Tesla bots capable of jumping with extreme landing sensitivity. In the demo, a leg jumped and landed on an egg without breaking it. And again, it was just kind of like a jumping leg, but still it landed on an egg without shattering it. The company also demoed human-trained AI with workers performing tasks in motion tracking suits and head-mounted cameras to teach the robots how to pick up items on a table and place them in a box. Tesla's long-term goal for Optimus involves performing unsafe, repetitive, or tedious tasks. CEO Elon Musk says production could begin this year. Production might begin this year, Jeff, but I don't know that we see Optimus in a factory that quickly.
Nowhere close.
Okay.
This is not an industrial robot. This is a humanoid robot. I don't really understand why he even rolled this out at this particular event. If you're looking at this mechanism, this creation, this piece of robotics being used to actually make something in an auto facility, you are way off. I just don't see how this works. I understand it's great in terms of how it's actually teaching the robot how to potentially perform assembly operations, but even watching it do that, there's no way there's any efficiency gained here. Plus, did you see the way it was moving? I know you said it was a great improvement over last time.
Yeah.
Sure, because it didn't fall down.
Yeah.
But it's still super creepy.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
my God.
not fast. It looks like somebody on their tippy toes sneaking up on you to do something weird.
It does.
It looks like the Thriller video.
Yeah,
You're right. That's a good point.
It is extremely unnerving, uncomfortable. Nobody is going to want this in their facility. And if I'm an investor in Tesla, I'm going, build more cars, man. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
I don't get it. When you look at industrial robotics, this doesn't check any of the boxes. I don't see how this makes your operation better. If he wants to play with this type of stuff, why in the world is he putting it under Tesla? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
Now, look, Elon Musk is a lot smarter than me, and we've gone up and down in terms of things that he's done great and things that we just don't get what he's doing here. This one definitely falls under the head scratching mode for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't see where this is going. It seems so far off. This is at least, I would think, a year to 18 months before you should even show anybody what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's so excited about this.
I mean, you're right, because it does stand to reason that Tesla should have their own, essentially like a skunk works, where they could have these futuristic R&D developments that might be a better fit. But I don't know. I think the other way when it comes to industrial applications, I could see this doing simple assembly tasks. I could see these robots being used for, palletizing or other warehouse activities. Not exactly manufacturing assembly like mission critical assembly, but I see it could take over some tasks that are otherwise, as he says, tedious. I see that there's a spot there, but I think what Anna's going to talk about is how there's kind of already a robot for that spot of the market. And I mean, the only difference here is that this cobot has legs and instead of being on an AGV.
Well, I want to know what Elon Musk refers to as tedious and repetitive, because he's described eating and sleeping as this way. So I want somebody else to set up those parameters.
Grocery shopping, he hates that.
Yeah.
He's said that before.
It's going to be present for his family.
Well, and too tedious.
Oh.
Yeah. But Anna, getting to the robotic side of this,
Yeah.
cobots do perform a lot of these tasks, but isn't there an opportunity there where, I don't see why it doesn't need to be humanoid, but making it more mobile and capable of performing multiple tasks, there's a value there.
I don't know. I hate to do this, but I'm agreeing with Jeff like largely on
It's
this
only
one.
because
And,
he's back this week. No.
to me, I see this as same. Just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. And that, really to me, it's because Tesla's an auto company. This is not their core competency. I will acknowledge, of course, that there is so much crossover these days between auto and electronic systems, and that Tesla specifically has a lot of development taking place around automation. I realize that this applies, but at the same time, it just feels like an adjacent effort. The objective of which, as you said, is to make the factories more efficient. But this technology, as it applies to many factory use cases, already exists. And even if the existing cobot tech on the market, to your point, doesn't exactly fit, don't you think that they're probably light years ahead of what you're doing at Tesla in terms of both function and safety? Because there wasn't even a prototype in 2021. It was a joke, more or less, right?
It was a man in a suit. It was a joke.
Right. And now we're to believe that Tesla could begin production on it this year. Even if that was close to true, would you want that product? We know that Tesla has been willing to test autopilot on the general public, despite concerns from regulators and consumers that it's not ready for that and it's a safety risk. He would potentially prove these out in a live factory environment. And I just don't think that that's safe for anyone involved. I think he's like out of his lane a little bit on this, and I just don't get it. I would also add that, a productive and effective cobot is very far from what we're seeing in this video, as Jeff said. That most of the footage is just the walking, the creepy walking. Jumping on an egg and landing very lightly is not a tedious industrial task. So I don't know. I'm not even sure what they're trying to do with that. But I guess there's just so much testing to be done here, and I just don't see the point of it. I don't see the point of starting from scratch. If you need a robot that bad within your facility, go team up with one of the, hundreds of very capable automation companies that are already like 2/3 of the way there, and then make it work for your application. This doesn't make sense.
Well, that's the thing. Don't you think if he approached somebody like Fanuc and said, hey, I really want to develop some robotics, they'd be all over this.
For sure.
I mean, maybe, but I see this more, some of the stuff that we've seen come out of DARPA with the robots that they've had in terms of pelletizing, stuff like that. But I don't know. I think part of it also is that showing the failures throughout his development process helps Musk connect and endear himself and his brands to fans. I do. I think for every Jeff and Anna, there are two other people out there that are just like,
okay, but this was at a stockholder meeting.
Yeah, but I mean,
do you think when you're talking about stockholders, are they fans or do they want to see return?
But I think that, there is a real potential. I mean, we have a huge talent shortage, skills gap, where if he can prove that these humanoids could even fill some roles, and even take a piece of the robotics market, I think there's real value there. I mean, maybe stockholders feel this differently, but I understand why he's going after it. Also because of the potential tie-in with AI. Now, I want to see if, when, and how generative AI is going to be incorporated into these robots, because Musk has come out as kind of like, at first he was an advocate for AI. He was on OpenAI's board, I believe. And then once OpenAI went into Microsoft and he was kind of pushed out, then he was completely against it. But if you could see how generative AI could be incorporated into these robots to teach them how to be more effective, I think they could do a light year pass over cobots.
Okay, but why is he hung up on the humanoid element? Because
he wants to vertically integrate his labor, because he has so much resentment for actual humans. I do believe that.
Yeah. No,
you can't argue it. Really, I mean.
Because it's so much easier to micromanage a humanoid robot on the shop floor. And actually, I think his ideal factory is him and his engineers sleeping on the floor while humanoid robots build cars. Ideal scenario. I also, I think that because of the embarrassing failures at the AI demo last year, I almost find myself rooting for Optimus. I'm excited by the progress. And it also just reinforces how Musk can be good as a salesman and a showman, which isn't always bad.
Right.
Sometimes goes way bad. But To go from that laughingstock failure less than a year ago to this, I don't know. I think there's some good there.
You just can't wait to bow down to the robotic overlord, can you?
No,
you're getting way out ahead of it now.
Legitimately terrified of it. Just seeing how quickly generative AI has come aboard and what we are doing with robotics. Once we combine that, legitimate fear over that, and hoping that at least people just adhere to Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, knowing that they won't. And sci-fi aside, like legitimate replacement of humans.
You should have been at the conferences I was at then. So because they're much more AI is going to be important, but human presence is going to be more important with the more AI we develop. So you and Musk can bow down to your robots, and
no, we don't.
We're going to live in the real world.
I don't think it's bowing down to it. I think it's realizing the untapped potential of it still, and just whether or not it's going to be reined in. Because right now it's SAP.
He was one of the guys who signed that letter saying let's slow down AI.
That's like of course he's going to do that. Like especially given the time.
Complex salesperson. He sells against himself and then for his stuff at the same time.
No,
that's incredible.
That's his way of being like, no, see, I know the dangers that AI holds, and I would never let that happen to my humanoid robots. And then, whoopsie daisy, I didn't see that coming. Just didn't see it coming. Come on, man. He's Lex Luthor, man. He's not Iron Man. All right. Our most popular story this week. Ford says it will stop competing in overserved markets. The days of Ford being all things to all people are over. And that's according to Ford CEO Jim Farley, who says the company won't compete in overserved markets and plans to place big bets on connected vehicles and digital services. He says the company has been, quote, stuck in a box with little profit and weak growth. Ford's focus will be software and services and iconic, see also higher margin, vehicles like pickup trucks, large SUVs, commercial vehicles, and next-gen EVs. The company is getting leaner and meaner. For example, the new F-150 coming out this year is going to have 2,400 less parts on the bill of materials. Anna Farley hopes that focusing on software services and these iconic products with tailored ownership experiences will make the company less vulnerable to economic unrest. Is that just to make shareholders more comfortable with their current economic unrest?
Well, of course, all of this comes down to pandering to shareholders, but also I think the objective is a good one. Trying to eliminate complexity can net you benefits from so many areas in automotive. It speeds up production. It reduces service and repair challenges. In many cases, it can reduce your carrying costs significantly if you can cull the number of parts you need to have on hand. Ford saying that it reduced by 2,400 parts from the bill of materials for the F-150 is a very good demonstration of that. One component of Ford's new strategy that I think was a little bit less publicized is that the company says that it's going to scale back future investments in China. After several years of struggling to connect with the Chinese buyer, Ford is basically addressing their lackluster sales by saying that China is still important to us, but we have to focus on higher growth regions. So Ford has already introduced some new models that are specifically designed for China. They have a joint venture in China called Chang'an Ford, which only held 1% of all Chinese light vehicle sales in 2022, which was a decline from 4% market share in 2016. So it's not going well. They took like a pretty big loss, $572 million last year in China alone. So going forward, Farley said that it will be a lower investment, leaner, much more focused business in China. I don't know if other automakers are considering this market, which is the largest current market for EVs, as being overserved. But I do think this is a good move for Ford nonetheless, and it also allows the company to really focus on scaling to the U.S. market and then also taking advantage of those tax credits, which they're really making a concerted effort to make sure that they're building components here so the buyers can have that financial incentive to buy. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to touch on his point around uniquely tailored ownership experience
Yeah.
and a focus on service, and wonder if you guys also took that to mean Ford will be nickeling and diming its customers with features as a service.
Charging to put the windows up.
Yeah, my guess is yes. I mean, like, obviously, if this is taking off as a model for revenue amongst their competitors, they're not going to leave that money on the table, right? So even if it means charging you to use your window wipers, that's what we have to look forward to.
I see automotive, and Jeff, I'm sure you'll disagree with me, but I see automotive almost becoming more like televisions and consumer electronics, where essentially they're almost giving away the television because of how they're going to charge you on services. They're going to sell your data, and they're going to monetize you after you're in the vehicle.
At least you're not paranoid.
I'm not paranoid.
You're not,
it doesn't matter. Once I get iced by Optimus, once he's rolled out, it'll be fine.
Did you have your jump to conclusions map out when you were putting this together?
No, we have that at home. It's packed away.
Nice.
Ready for the next house.
Excellent. It's interesting when I first read all this. Getting back to your question about automotive, I don't think it's going to go that far. The writing is on the wall. We can see all these services that are coming on as add-on charges and potential revenue channels for these automakers, and they're going to pursue it. How successful they are in terms of their forecasting, that's what's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. I'm not as optimistic as you are in terms of how successful that's going to be.
I don't think. Oh yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah,
it's not optimism.
Or how you're worried about. Yeah. I think it's going to be diminished in the long term because I don't think it's going to turn out the way they want it to.
Because of consumer buy-in.
Right. Yeah. I just don't see it becoming as lucrative as they want it to or think it can become. Mm-hmm. Okay. I know that you guys feel like it's going to be forced upon us and we're going to have to pay and all this. I think there's going to be a lot of backlash. I just don't see it. I see there's going to be some things that as we get more advanced in terms of wireless technology and software over-the-air upgrades and things like that, yes. But again, I think it's going to be more in the middle as opposed to this savior, if you will, for the OEs. When I first saw his comments, or I first saw the headline, the first thing I thought of was actually GE. Remember when GE, after I'm out left, they got rid of all of those businesses that they basically said, this is not core to what we do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're getting rid of them. And that opened up a lot of opportunities to other smaller companies. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Other than the China stuff, which I didn't see, that's really interesting. He didn't really identify anything else. The first thing that came to my mind was Lincoln. Are they finally going to cut that loose? Because you're looking at luxury SUVs and CUVs, basically. That's what Lincoln is right now. No electric models, kind of a dated brand name. I mean, is that something they're going to look to get away from? Are there other places in Asia? You mentioned China. They've also got joint ventures in Thailand and other places throughout Asia. Is that going to be something they do? So it'll be interesting to see how this actually plays out and if it opens up opportunities for other players. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of this, I think it may have just been pandering to the crowd a little bit. When you are transparent, I give them a lot of credit for this because one of the things they covered was he feels they're something like $7 billion. They have $7 billion more in costs than their next closest competitor or their excess costs or whatever. So obviously when you throw that number out there, it's got to be more than just reassuring to say, we see it. Now you got to say we're going to do something about it.
Right, yeah.
You've also got their E division, which is losing $3 billion this year. Mm-hmm. That's what he is forecasting. So if you're Ford, you're in this awkward spot where you can't go all the way to E because you still got a lot of money that you need to get out of your traditional gas engine powered business, but that is the future. So in the meantime, you're going to take some losses and you need to supplement those losses with some wins in other places, or at least keep your shareholders happy in the meantime. When automakers do talk about services, and we just kind of hammered that, but that does make me nervous because I just don't think it's going to be this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that they think it's going to be.
It'll be the same arc, in my opinion, as all the content channels that we subscribe to, where right now there's an oversaturation of subscription for content channels, and now we're seeing a pullback and a contraction as people just realize they don't need that much content.
No, that's a good analogy.
And so I think it'll be interesting because cars will come out, maybe they'll be less expensive, and probably for very low price points, you'll be able to subscribe to some of these various features in your car. Some you'll be angry about, that when you want navigation or something. But I think that initially there's going to be excitement and buy-in, and then eventually people are going to realize they don't need that. and they're going to lose those revenue streams and kind of wind up scrambling like we see a lot of people right now. Farley promises that Ford is competing differently and placing, quote, big bets in its 3 customer-centered business segments. So that's Ford Blue, which are the iconic gas-powered and hybrid vehicles, the F-150s, Ranger trucks, Bronco SUVs. Ford Model E, which anytime the company mentions Ford Model E, the next word is always startup. A startup within Ford. That's their way of being like a startup hemorrhaging money, as all startups do. But it's fine.
We're just like everybody else.
Yeah. It's rapidly developing innovative, updatable next-gen EVs, as well as the breakthrough digital platforms and software. And I think, not so much the EVs. I think when they talk about these subscription services, that's where they see the money, are the digital platforms and software being developed by the Model E segment. And Ford Pro. Farley calls Ford Pro the company's, quote, secret weapon to help commercial customers lower the total cost of vehicle ownership and transform their enterprises with a lineup of specialized gas, hybrid, and electric vehicles, and increasing attached rates for productivity services like prognostics and telematics. So is Ford Pro essentially like cars as a service?
What's secret about it?
That's just what I was wondering. It's like, hey, we got this really cool thing.
Yeah.
It's a secret. So let me tell you about it. So it's not a secret.
We're a publicly traded company, so I'm legally required to put it in this.
Maybe it's a secret weapon because just not enough people are paying for it yet. I don't know.
It does feel like a version 2.0 type of thing for all the features you get now, like an upgrade type deal. And again, I think they're just over extending on a lot of these service offerings that they're putting out there.
Yeah, it's the car's free, man, for your fleet. So that way, low capital cost entry, but anytime you use it, we're going to charge you.
It's just like what, turnkey fleet management, basically? Is that what they're saying? That they, because it says productivity services like prognostics and telematics. So they want to we'll take care of all the maintenance and we'll take care of
Yeah, no, that's, we've seen models like that with machines that, it's not machines as a service, but where you get the machine for free and basically you just pay every time there's uptime. And then you pay based on production. So I don't know. Interesting model. We'll see if it goes anywhere. Ford Model E's growth expectations include a production capacity run rate of 2 million EVs by the end of 2026. I found this particularly interesting because Ford sold 61,000 EVs last year, and that we've covered many times before, made it the second largest EV maker in the US behind Tesla. But now the company is aiming to make 360,000 EVs this year, which it's already struggling to do. Do you guys envision that it is going to be able to hit 2 million EVs within 3 years?
That's a tall
order.
That's a lot.
This is how they got in trouble the first time, okay? By overproducing and then not being able to charge what they needed to for their product because they needed to sell them.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous cycle that they're potentially running into if they actually do try to hit that number, because that's 700% increase in 3 years. That's how you overproduce and undersell, and then you can't charge enough for your product because you have to get it out the door.
It does make sense, though, with the car is free, but we're going to charge you every time you start it.
But we don't know that that's their model, right?
No, but I'm trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense otherwise to me.
Yeah.
Cars will never be free.
I mean,
cars, trucks, SUVs, vehicles will never be free.
It's a changing world. Bikes are getting more expensive. Cars will be free. Be a
Cats
new world.
And dogs and robots.
I also want to see the day that you find a automaker lower the cost of their vehicle because they're going to assume you're going to buy features later. That's never going to happen. If it happens, I want you to call me that second.
Timestamp it right now. In 10 years, we'll call it 10. I think it'll happen in 5, but in 10, we'll circle back.
I will be playing pickleball. No, not that old.
Just
getting there.
Right? 10 years from now, I'll be playing pickleball. It's still a work day. Your lunch has been 4 hours. All right. Well, let's, before we move on to In Case You Missed It, the stories maybe not as popular on the websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from Adobe. Hi, I'm David Manti, and I want you to join me and John Burdett from Adobe to discuss practical tips, how to transform your digital sales and self-service. John, one thing that we're going to be talking about is how you can create these sales Ironmen, augmented salespeople. Is this just a cheap ploy to tie in a Marvel tie, or is this a real thing that people could use?
This is a real thing. This is automating your sales and service so that your salespeople can go out and sell even more, with automation having their back and not competition for it. It's allowing them to do more with the less that they always have in terms of time and effort and energy.
Very good. Plus, then they can go home and tell their kids that they're an Iron Man.
That they're Iron Man.
Excellent. Well, very much looking forward to it. Make sure to register at the link below and join myself and John Burdett for practical tips, how to transform your digital sales and self-service. We'll see you there. And we're back. And just a reminder that changing customer expectations and increasing cost and competitive pressures are forcing industrial manufacturers to rethink how they engage with buyers to grow revenue, improve profitability, and gain operational efficiencies. John Burdett from John's from Adobe. We recently sat down and chopped it up, talked about how manufacturers should consider their commerce initiatives and what they should do to tie in their digital customer experience. You can watch it now. Hopefully I get through it a little bit easier than I got through that read. Now, before we jump into it, in case you missed it, Sonny B, who's watching us live, thank you very much for joining us, says the Tesla bot is a response to Agility's recent news, and all three of us are unfamiliar with Agility. I'm pretty sure, was Agility the one that was deploying out of the back of the Ford fleet? And it was that last mile concept where they would deploy it out the back of the Ford and then, or the commercial vehicle. Yeah, see, that makes more sense.
Use that, Tesla.
And yeah.
That looks much less
Tesla,
creepy.
Yeah, Tesla, buy Agility. And you're going to be light years ahead. This is a jumping, oh no, I thought it was going to be a jumping robot. But
it's just extending like you'd expect a robot to do so.
Yeah. Producer Alex thinks that it looks like he's stretching, but no, that's it's an interesting robot. We will look into it and cover it more on a segment in the future. Thank you very much for bringing that up to us. Now, in case you missed it, story's not as popular. Oh, and the other one that I messed up, Jeff brought it to light that it wasn't Fiat in the Italian Job. It was the Mini Cooper. And yeah, just a huge swing and a miss on my part. It's a small car. It's tiny little baby cars. Tiny little baby cars, neither of us are driving.
Little baby car.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to tear out the seat and sit in the back so we can actually drive it. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I chose a story about Peloton, just because this company has seen so many ups and downs in the last couple of years. They recently announced that they would be undergoing a significant rebrand. So they're basically dumping their identity as a seller of luxury exercise bikes and equipment to becoming a technology and equipment for all company. So their chief marketing officer said in a statement on Tuesday that they're shifting perceptions from in-home to everywhere. Fitness enthusiasts to people at all levels, exclusivity to inclusivity. The company rolled out new pricing for tiered membership. It's lower prices. They said that the app is now offering more free classes. When I saw this, I was like, I guess. I mean, so obviously, you know the history with Peloton. They had a huge, like 18, 19, 20. They sold a ton of bikes at the beginning of the pandemic. That as conditions started to ease, that kind of aligned with some problems that they were having with recalls and some accidents that occurred they had some quality problems. So they fell apart, basically. So they were this darling. They had a great, share price, and then suddenly they just tanked. They've been trying. They fired their CEO. They've been trying to get back on some solid footing since then. I don't know. Do you think this is enough to save it? Like lowering their prices to sell to everyone? Because to me, I think like one of the biggest things that it had going for it before was the high-end designation.
Well, and the captive audience.
But
like legit, like literally captive audience.
Sure. Yes, for sure. They got a boost from that. But also, without an identity or a brand, I guess, exercise equipment is a bit of a commodity. I mean, they almost did. To me, it seems like they almost didn't have a choice here, that they either like lowered their price or don't survive. Because once you buy a bike, how long before you need a new one? It's not like a Louis Vuitton handbag where you might buy
need a new one a season.
Yeah, like of multiple things for multiple occasions is like. Even with luxury vehicles, there's sort of a cult factor there, and people are sort of gearheads about it. No one is like that about an exercise bike. So
it's almost gone the other way now, where it used to be when you went to somebody's house, the Peloton was like prominently displayed. And it's like, oh, you have a Peloton. What's it like? And now it's the exact opposite, where it's like, yeah, that's my Peloton.
Well, and I mean, exactly. I mean, how often are you going to replace that thing? Either like every 10 years? I don't know. So I think they had to expand their market to survive. But does it work? I don't know. I was very interested to read the story, and now I'm even more interested to watch to see what happens, because I just don't know if that's going to work or not.
When I saw the story, and then when I read the story, I just kind of got sad.
I know, it's sad.
They're based in Madison, I believe, or at least they still have a presence in Madison. Yeah, right off Park Street. Or did they never move into that building?
I don't think that's true.
But I knew that they did have a presence here. But to me, this just sort of seems like last ditch effort.
It is.
And but the part that did kind of turn my head a little bit was that they were opening up to potentially free classes, because it was always something that I was not willing to pay a subscription service for. But I mean, come on, if I'm being honest, like if I could take 1 or 2 free Peloton classes a week, I'm going to be doing light years better.
But I mean, like, so are you going to buy a Peloton bike because they give you a free class?
No.
So
but
what do they gain from that?
I'm going to be appreciative, and in 5 weeks,
Yep.
my final thought is going to be like, you know what? That one Peloton class was nice. It was way better than the free yoga in the park. So that should be something.
That is something.
That's of zero value.
So I uncovered that the Peloton's headquarters is in New York City.
What's the thing in Madison then?
In Madison, there is an apartment building called
well, then why
the Peloton.
Why is it branded? It was their logo.
I don't know. It's called
It's just the Peloton residences?
Yeah, it's for people who
did they get into real estate at some point?
People who love to ride.
You need to have a Peloton to live there.
Bikes, yeah.
It's the loudest apartment in all of Madison. Well, swinging a big miss there.
You nailed it, though.
I'm just crushing it this week. I mean, I don't know. If you can't drive past a building and see a logo on the side and just immediately assume it's a headquarters, I don't understand the world today. Jeff, your bets on Peloton living another 2 years?
I think if they were going to, if they were going to do this, they should have rolled it out under a different brand name. I think Peloton is kind of toxic right now. I think that's the biggest thing that they could do to help their company is to get away from that name. Try to institute some new branding, because although they had some horrible issues, quality issues with some of their products, it wasn't all of them. There were some products that were okay. Focus on the things that were working. And if you're going to go this route, which I do think is a good idea in terms of services, brand it under a different name so that people don't feel awkward about having a Peloton app on their phone or whatever.
Just no relation to the company here. It is just...
Let it go, bud.
I know, but it's crazy. I can't believe you can name something
No one else is going to remember this if you let it go right now.
I'll remember.
I know.
Oh, I can't wait for this to come up over and over and over again.
I was really just trying to help him feel better.
The first time. That was the first. All right. Well, Jeff, what's your in case you missed it this week?
I picked kind of a rough. I'm glad I'm not going last because this could be a bad one. I picked a story on UPS Strike Looms in a world more reliant on delivery. So basically the situation is UPS, which is a Teamsters union, their contract expires July 31st of this year. Okay. And if, as you can guess, these 350,000 working members of UPS, they feel like they did a lot during the pandemic and it's time for UPS to pay up. UPS has seen a couple of incredible years of like $8 billion in shareholder to returns, okay? Extremely profitable. And there's a lot of history here as well between the Teamsters / UPS employees and UPS. Kind of actually goes back to 1997. That was the last time that UPS workers went on strike. They were on strike for 15 days. It cost UPS $600 million. Okay, that's 26 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So you can imagine what that is now. UPS is also right now handling about 1/4 of all shipments, basically to commercial residents in the U.S. right now. So if they do go on strike at the end of July, or end of July, August 1st, it's going to have a huge impact on supply chain issues. We thought it was bad before. If they don't get this figured out, it's going to be a big problem. UPS, the workers are extremely serious about this. Let's put it this way. They even fired a guy with the last name of Hoffa, okay? It was James Hoffa was the head of their union. They fired that guy because he was not aggressive enough.
Oh, man.
Okay, so they are being very straightforward with UPS in terms of meeting their demands. Specifically, a lot of the things that they're looking for aren't crazy, okay? They're looking for in addition to addressing part-time pay and what workers say is excessive overtime, the union wants to eliminate a contract provision that created 2 separate hierarchies of workers with different pay scales, hours, and benefits. Driver safety, particularly the lack of air conditioning in delivery trucks, is also in the mix. In addition, so what happened when they solved that 1997 strike? Basically, UPS said, hey, we're going to give you more money, come back to work, we'll figure this out. The contract lapsed in 98. That's when the contract actually came to an end. UPS, as part of bringing everybody back, said, we're also going to create like 2,000 jobs. They didn't. UPS took a downturn in that point in time in the economy. They were down 4 or 5%. They never made those hires, but the workers were sort of tied into that contract, okay? They remember this. 2018, the contract expired as well. Workers came, they were looking for more, they wanted to renegotiate the contract, but basically there was some sort of legal issue in terms of the way things were carried out that they had to accept the previous contract basically without a vote.
No.
So they remembered that as well. It's 5 years later, the contract is up, there's a history of UPS and the Teamsters not working so great together. This could be huge. If these guys go on strike, if these men and women and with UPS go on strike, that's 350,000 delivery people. Plus you're talking about the Teamsters union. The Teamsters union also has people represented in other delivery facets, other delivery industries. And if they get all those people on board striking for UPS workers' benefits, this is a nightmare waiting to happen.
That sounds like it could be incredibly disruptive. Anna, what have you heard about this potential UPS strike?
Well, it will be interesting to see what happens. Another story that I saw a month or two ago about UPS's chief rival FedEx was that FedEx is looking at potentially outsourcing all the drivers on its payroll and looking to contract workers for those roles.
Taking like the Amazon model?
Yeah, they think that it's going to boost their their profitability, which it likely would. But the execution question is a big one, and so I don't know. You'll wonder with UPS, with that happening in the background, and UPS looking at like, okay, do we also go in that direction? That certainly is a possibility. But like, how would both of these massive companies in this time of extreme demand outsource all those workers at the same time? I don't see that being done. I don't think that's possible.
Well, and what the Teamsters said too, remember with all that was going on in California with the delivery people and the gig economy and how they're trying to get them treated less like employees and more like contractors. What the Teamsters is saying is a lot of those folks have joined the Teamsters.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you've got a lot of independent contractors that would fill these roles that are also part of the union, well, that takes you out at the knees there as well.
Yeah. Man, big box stores have to be salivating right now.
Well, they still need product delivered to them. I mean, they get stuff from UPS too.
Yeah.
I mean, not to the same extent that a regular consumer does.
Yeah.
I mean, Amazon's got to be freaking out about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, just day-to-day stuff. I mean, this could really have a huge impact if they don't get this figured out, or even if they're on strike for a week.
Yeah.
Think about what that would mean. And just trying to catch up after a week.
Do you think this could be more disruptive than the rail strike that we just barely averted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Okay.
And it's interesting how these things are all coming to a head with some of the same issues. They still haven't really figured out everything with the rail workers in terms of sick pay and getting time off and things like that. And you'd think, the Teamsters aren't stupid. They're looking at that stuff too, which is why I think they're going to be more adamant about getting it all right up front, spelled out in that contract, as opposed to the railway folks who kind of came back without having everything figured out.
They were kind of forced back, weren't they, by the administration?
Yeah.
And if this could potentially be as disruptive, could that be possible too?
Well, you know what a fan I am of having government involved in private industry. So it could be. but let's hope not.
Yeah. Jesse, who's watching us live, always good to see you, Jesse, says our entire supply of apparel would be affected at my job, and that would be terrible. Yeah. Yes, it would be terrible, Jesse. Yeah. Well, let's hope we can avert this strike, but I mean, it doesn't sound good.
Man, I think UPS has to pay.
Yeah.
Just being real.
All right. Well, my in case you missed it this week is innovative, but grim. A Dutch inventor is growing mushroom coffins. And I found this interesting for a number of reasons. But while it's true that we're all just going to become worm food in the end, the current state of body disposal often makes it difficult for like worms to ever find us. A Dutch inventor is now growing coffins with mycelium, a root structure of mushrooms and hemp fiber. Traditional wooden coffins can take decades to grow and years to break down in the soil. These mushroom versions biodegrade and deliver the remains to nature in about a month and a half. The company, which is called Loop Biotech, claims to have a solution for those wanting to live a full circle of life. At a press event, the company's 29-year-old founder, Bob Hendricks, wore a shirt that read, "I am compost," which is just a big swing, Bob. That is a big swing.
I like it.
Probably. I like it too. I ordered one. Mushrooms are the biggest recyclers on the planet. I encourage everybody to watch Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. They also make an urn that can be, this is Loop Biotech, that also makes an urn that can be buried with a sapling sticking out of it. So when the urn is broken down, the ashes help give the tree life. These coffins cost about $1,000 each. The urn is about $212. And I thought there was great potential for this because I think there is a huge gap when it comes to how bodies are disposed of with respect and with still servicing the planet. You know, some of the bodies still need to be like encased in concrete and then buried. I like solutions like this. I'm a big proponent of the where your body is buried with a tree and then essentially feeds the tree. Mm-hmm. The one that didn't make a lot of sense to me was the urn because, you know, you can kind of just spread ashes by a tree and then you feed the tree. But the coffin could really make an impact and could be very disruptive if the industry is receptive to it. Anna, did you have a chance to check out mushroom coffins?
Yeah, I did. And I agree. I think this is cool. There's a lot of, I guess, uniformity in what's available for people right now in the funeral industry. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of like really expensive options.
The low end coffin is $2,000.
Oh, I know. And then, you know, I think people have a very varied, I guess, perspective on how they would want to, you know, be in after they die, like where you would want to be and how, you know, a lot of people I don't think are down with like the thought of being in an expensive metal coffin and you know, it's cool that you can, if you feel like strongly about the environment and, you know, that you could kind of go back into the earth and help grow something. So, yeah. I think it's cool.
Yeah. This is right up there with donating your organs and body to science, with continuing to kind of give back after you've passed on. Mm-hmm. I know that could be sort of pie in the sky for some people that might think it's ridiculous. But again, Jeff, coffins range from like $2,000 on the low end to $5,000 at the high end. And I don't know, there's a claustrophobic part of me. The idea of this being buried in a coffin, in a concrete tomb, you know, again, it's just like, you know, it's right up there with the sinkhole fear, you know, of being buried alive. But I mean, if I'm buried in a mushroom, man, I know.
You do overthink.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to do something.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
You really don't.
I just crochet and think about this stuff.
No, I think this is cool. I think it brings a different dynamic to what can be a very difficult time or some difficult decisions. So if somebody makes this, especially if they make the specification beforehand, you know, and say, this is what I want to do, I think it's cool. I think anytime we can put more natural stuff into the ground, it's better.
Yeah. I will admit that some of the photos of their facility are unsettling. You know, just a bunch of pauper pods hanging out on shelves.
Back in the day, Anna, didn't you do a cover story for Impo magazine on a coffin manufacturing facility?
I did. Batesville Casket in Batesville, Tennessee, Indiana.
In a Batesville.
Yeah, they had a very interesting production facility, and I got to see it, and they're just like very frank and straightforward about the market conditions, and so it's weird because they do better when more people die.
Yeah.
So it was like odd to hear them explain it, but at the same time, it's reality, right?
Yeah. No, it is. A person that I went to high school with, his father ran a funeral home. He took over the funeral home. When you talk to him about running a funeral home, he says, people are always going to die, man.
True.
And it's just like, that is a grim reality that you live in every day, where I choose to be ignorant of it. Just like, you know what? We're all living forever. It's going to be great. All right. Well.
Until the robots come.
Until the robots come and bury us in mushroom coffins, because they're still going to need to sustain the planet. Our final thoughts before we get out of here. Anna, what's your final thought?
Final thought.
This is going to be a Memorial Day barbecue. Have a great time. Go see your family.
Yeah. We're going to have some friends over this weekend, which will be fun. My kids are super amped up. My daughter is invited to her 9 millionth birthday party of the year. So I get to go to the jumping place.
Yeah.
Again.
It's crazy how everyone in that class has a birthday and none of them are on the same day.
Every other weekend there's a birthday.
I like it.
I'm so glad that she has so many wonderful friends, and I know some parents hate going to kids' birthday parties, but I actually love it because everyone is just having a freaking blast, and it's adorable. So
no, agreed. I like it too. All the parents are sort of hanging out, having the half conversations while standing at the ready to address any sort of bleeding, fractures, especially at those jumping places.
Always at the jumping place.
Right? You have the small talk while you're all filling out the waiver beforehand. No, my final thought is, looking forward to the holiday weekend. If you're watching us live, hope you really have a chance to enjoy it and decompress. If you're listening to us Monday, like most people do, hope you had a great time. Also, happy birthday to loyal listener Seth. I hope you have a chance to get out and celebrate a bit with the family. And I'd like to leave you with this, if I can. The first law is that a robot shall not harm a human or by inaction allow a human to come to harm. The second law is that a robot shall obey any instruction given to it by a human. And the third law is that a robot shall avoid actions or situations that could cause it to come to harm itself. Jeff?
So what if it feels the third law is the most important, and that by ignoring the first two laws, it's following the third law?
Because of
the old wish for more wishes law.
Of its binary thinking, the first law is more important.
But with artificial intelligence,
that's the problem.
Don't we teach it to?
No, because artificial intelligence is just a query, man. So artificial intelligence, they just say, so what's the best for the survivability of the planet?
There is such a big part of me that wants to keep messing with you on this. But
I'll go all day.
I feel like we need to move forward.
Yeah, I think moving on.
I don't think so. Here, just hit the button again. New podcast. Let's go. No, episode 121. No, what are your plans for this weekend, Jeff?
I'm actually excited. I got a lot of good stuff going on. Definitely going to be outside doing some grilling, drinking some beer. So it should be good. Yeah. Closing thought was, you guys mentioned it. I've been gone the last couple of weeks. I was at a couple of different conferences. One for a vendor of ours that we use internally here. Another was for a company, Epicor, software that we work with. And there's a couple things that was unique or was similar to both of them. One was that there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and the effect that it's going to have on the business world and different applications for it, which I think are very intriguing and should be interesting. And we'll be talking more about that, I'm sure. The other was both had very prominent speakers. The one was because it was more of a media type, it's tools that we use in terms for our email and our marketing and our content and all that kind of stuff. It was a media focused conference, and they had a very prominent individual from a media company that everyone would recognize up there. And this individual was given an interview, and they were talking back and forth. And her focus was really on promoting what she was doing, her brand. And as a result, it didn't get real high marks. Oh, yeah. She didn't come off very well. It just was not a good presentation. I don't think it helped the sponsor of the conference. I don't think it helped her or her brand. Yeah. Okay, it was very disappointing.
So she came off and I'm thinking I can guess who it is, but did she come off selfish or
just
self-promotional?
Just very self-promoting. Oh, okay. And there was a lot of very interesting insights she could have added to the audience in terms of how to better run your business, certain things that they come across, transitioning from print and digital and all those types of things. That was never part of it because, again, her focus was on her, to be very honest. going to the Epicor conference, one of the best speakers I've ever heard was Billy Beane.
Oh,
For those who don't know, he was general manager of the Oakland A's. He's the Moneyball guy. He was played by Brad Pitt in the movie. Made a lot of good jokes about how they nailed the casting there and all of that.
Yeah.
But when he got up there and he spoke about his experiences and basically using analytics to run his baseball team and how they were constantly evolving and talking about it, he wasn't just talking about himself to promote himself. He was talking about subject matter that anybody who works with any type of data could take away and apply to their job. He made it applicable to the audience. It wasn't just about his hubris and what he had done and, hey, look at me. It was, this is what I did to be successful, and here's how this could also apply to you. And you just had two individuals, both very prominent, well-known, who took just polarizing approaches to their presentation. And as a result, one really bettered their brand or their image, and one did the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting, and I don't know how much any of us or anybody else out there has an opportunity to do that by getting in front of people, but just making that connection to the audience as opposed to just promoting yourself. I mean, it makes a huge difference, being on the other end of that. It was,
For sure.
It was kind of
Yeah.
interesting
That's
takeaway.
why you're there, right?
Yeah.
I think that applies too to like, people are doing a lot of not just public speaking, but like content generation for their companies, and just making sure that you're coming at that from a vantage point of being a subject matter expert, providing some sort of educational takeaway, and not just saying like, this is why we do this the best. Nobody gains anything from that. So
In telling a story people want to hear.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine. And if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up right now. We'll pause for it. Thank you. All right. But for Jeff Franke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. We'll see you next week.